Hello, my name is John Rose, and in this video I'd like to take a closer look at Enemas and Colonics. And in order to understand Enemas and Colonics, you need to understand a little bit more about my philosophy. And it's really quite simple, although it might seem a little complicated in the beginning, but you have to understand what I'm trying to encompass. Basically everything. And my philosophy is that we have to satisfy two groups of needs. And I call that the science and art of solving problems that are 100% within our control. So, Enemas and Colonics are part of the art. And I've said this over and over because this is one of the most important things we have to understand. And that is that we should never apply the art without the science, and yet that's what most people do, especially when they use Enemas and Colonics. So, what do I believe about Enemas and Colonics? Well, the way most of them are using, I'll give them a big X. They're failures because they're doing the art without the science. Now, when I say the science and the art, once again, there are two groups of needs we must satisfy. There are 12 essential needs that are based on the law of cause and effect. And then there are two additional temporary needs that are based on the ripple effect. And what I find interesting is there's one group of people who really understand the law of cause and effect better than anyone else because they know what comes before the effect, or the cause rather. They know what comes before the cause. They have knowledge of how to live, and this is what most people don't have. So, I've explained this before that there are three ways to screw up the law of cause and effect, and you can go down to the description box below and I'll have a link for that. And one way we screw up the law of cause and effect is when we don't have the knowledge of how to live that comes before the cause. So there's one group of people, they call themselves natural hygienists, that they understand that most people are screwing up the law of cause and effect because they don't know or they don't have the knowledge of how to live. And they're very adamant about their approach to solving problems because they also are screwing up the law of cause and effect, and they don't know it. But they know deep down that they're right, and I understand why they think the way they do, because they think to themselves, I know I'm right because you can't screw it, because there's law of cause and effect, and that's what's happening, and you can't negate that. Yes, but you can screw up the law of cause and effect when you don't recognize what comes after the effect, and that's where we have a ripple effect. That's where effects can actually become causes, as in the causal loop, and effects can become knowledge, as in the knowledge loop. And I've explained all that before in other videos, and I know that gets a little boring when I start talking like this for some of y'all, but bear with me on this because this is really simple, and we need to understand why people are screwing up the law of cause and effect. Because what happens is the people who know what comes before the cause don't know what comes after the effect, so as a result, they don't think we need the art. And they classify everything in the art in the same group as allopathic medicine, which is also part of that group, because there is a time and a place when we have to treat the symptom in that way. But most of the art that natural hygiene poo-poos and gives a blanket statement against is art that we need to use because we can't change everything overnight. So I've said this countless times. We can change what we do overnight and remove the primary causes immediately, which is what the natural hygienists are wanting to do. But the thing is, we can't change what we got overnight. And sometimes some of the effects we got are causing problems. Like diabetes, for example. You may still have to take insulin because you're not producing any. Or you may, and a good example of the ripple effect is when diabetes causes blindness and gangrene. And doctors say, what's the number one cause of blindness in America? It's diabetes. Well, diabetes is not a primary cause, it's a subsequent cause that becomes another cause, you see? So, we have subsequent causes that aren't going to go away just because we remove the primary causes. So there's a time and a place to use herbs, there's a time and a place to use supplements, there's a time and a place to use enemas and colonics. And some natural hygienists really think that's a big mistake. And it is a mistake if you apply the art without the science. But as long as you're applying the science, you're a fool if you don't understand that there's art that no one has enough wisdom to understand. No one can know everything to say, I know exactly how to apply the art with each person, because everybody's damaged themselves uniquely in that way. So that's why we play a role when it comes to solving our problems, because we've got to investigate our problems and learn about them. It doesn't take that long to figure out what organs we have that are damaged and learn about them. And then once you understand how to heal them, you can heal yourself. But to heal most of our problems, the science is not always enough. It is for most of us, but a lot of times we have to apply the art. So why would you do an enema? Why would you do a colonic? And would you ever do the art without the science? Actually, there is one time, or several times, I guess, when you think about it, that we could apply the art to see if it might wake us up. So I remember when I did my first colonic, the one thing that I figured out from that is, boy, this is a good way to wake up someone who refuses to change what they eat. Or when you tell people, you are full of shit, and I mean it literally, and they don't believe you, have them do a colonic and watch the crap come out of them. Now, when I did a colonic, I had a gravity-fed machine where the waste matter the water was coming right between my legs, and the waste matter was coming right out between my legs through a nice little chute that I could see. Now, I prepared for this colonic in advance. I wanted to see what it was all about. I had been raw for several years, had done several juice fasts. I knew I had bad stuff in me. I knew what it looked like. And I said, I'm going to eat nothing but fruit for a whole week. No salads, no nuts, nothing but fruit for a whole week. And I'm looking at things coming out of me and going, hey, I'm really clean. I can test that colonic out. And when I did that colonic, I saw the same old stuff come out of me that I saw when I did a juice fast and put nothing in, and I saw stuff coming out of me. So it got my attention, and again, I realized there's a time and a place for some people to do a colonic just so it can wake them up and realize, look, you've got a serious problem. But the solution is not the colonic by itself, because that's only the art. You gotta stop making mistakes. You gotta apply the science. So I've shown you two ways we can screw up the law of cause and effect. Most people don't have the knowledge of how to live like the natural hygienists do, so they make mistakes and have problems, and then they use enemas and colonics without correcting the mistakes. That's a mistake. In fact, I don't believe in using anything like herbs or enemas or colonics without removing the causes, because what it can do is it can take away our motivation. It can take away pain that might motivate us to make the change. Most of us usually have to hit rock bottom before we change. And of course, pain is a great motivator, so we should take advantage of that whenever we are in pain, to realize that maybe I should look at something I'm doing. But we've been lied to and convinced that, no, it's not your fault. So we don't think we're making mistakes. So there are ways we can test out certain things. We can do a colonic to see if we're full of shit. The best way to see how much crap you got inside you is to do the first of my three-step process, which you can go down to the description box below, and you can see a seminar I gave on how to do a solid food vacation. Now, when we do a solid food vacation, remember we have to satisfy two groups of needs. So there are three things we have to do. Number one, we have to give the body everything it needs. I'm not going to go into any detail right now about that. Second thing is we have to make sure we support our organs of elimination. And that's where it's real important. In fact, perhaps the most important rule here is to make sure the bowels move every day, in the very beginning especially. Because when we start drinking all these juices, all of our cells are going to empty out waste matter, and if the bowels aren't moving, then that waste matter is not going to take the next step and go out the body. It can get reabsorbed, and we can feel horrible. Now, Dr. John Tilden understood this when you do a water fast, and he advised in the first week, make sure you clean out the bowels, because you're going to get sick if you don't. Now, subsequent natural hygienists after Tilden didn't believe in that. In fact, I'll never forget when I found Toxemia by John Tilden online on the internet, and I had a digital copy of it. And I already had a copy that was reproduced by T.C. Fry, who kind of filled in the shoes after Herbert Shelton. By the way, those two guys didn't understand the ripple effect, and they died because of it. I'll come back to that probably in a moment. But for now, what I'm pointing out is that when Tilden published Toxemia Explained, which was when Fry published this book by Tilden, he took every reference of enemas out of that book because he didn't believe in it. Probably because he was anal retentive and had a negative potty experience or potty training experience. You see, certain things trigger people and they have a reaction based on it. Haven't you ever noticed that before? That you can say something to somebody and you think, why that person blow up? I've said that before to other people. No one's ever blown up, but for some reason that struck a nerve. Well, different things trigger people different ways. And there's a good likelihood that if you find someone who's violently opposed to enemas and colonics, there's a good chance they had a negative toilet training experience. And now they associate that with that experience, and they become anal retentive. as an excremental scientist, I can't help but laugh at the word anal, because you got to keep your humor about this. And it's interesting when you look at scatology and humor, and people laugh more at toilet humor than they do even sex. I mean, it's number one. Sex is two. One is humor. You can almost guarantee a laugh if you're given to an audience if you mention something about farting or something. In fact, someone's probably laughing and snickering right now because I said that. But anyway, you're going to find people who are violently opposed to this. And my approach to helping people is saying, look, you got to have that bowel movement every day in the beginning, and it's up to you to decide what you want to do, if you want to do anything at all. And what we have to understand is everything that we do to help the bowels move, whether it's an enema or colonic or herbs or saltwater flushes or whatever, in most cases, what that's going to do is it's going to be a slippery slope that we can become dependent upon. And that's why we never apply the art without the science. You never want to keep eating crap and then do enemas. If you're constipated, stop eating, you stupid fool. Why, instead of putting water up your butt to get that crap out of you, stop eating because you got a problem. If you're not pooping, you're putting in the wrong food. We should understand that if we had a half a brain in us and wasn't brainwashed at such an early age that we were taught absurdities and now we committed atrocities. But what we have to do is make a decision on our own. You decide if you want to do anything at all. And in the beginning, when I first did my juice fast, I read all the books and they all said, boy, when you do a juice fast, you got to do enemas, you got to do them, you got to do them. And I'm thinking, no, I don't want to do them. No, I'm not anal retentive. I don't think I had a bad potty experience. But I just didn't want to do them. I'm a man, and a lot of men don't like that anyway. So I played it by ear when I first started doing my juice fast. Now, I knew that when you defecate, you have to squat, and that made me think, I've never had a child, but I'm thinking, when you potty train a child, you got them sitting, no wonder they have a bad experience. You're not supposed to be sitting when you're pooping. You got to be squatting. So I knew to squat when I first started doing this, and I had really strong abdominals because I was actually doing abdominal exercises back then, and I had a really strong set of abs. So I had no problem having a bowel movement, and yay, I didn't have to do any enemas. But then I read about coffee enemas, and I thought to myself, now how can I teach people something that I don't know anything about? So I did a series of them, and they're not near as bad as they sound, but the coffee enemas themselves are not really for the colon, they're for the liver. So, as I mentioned before, there's a time and a place to do enemas and colonics and coffee enemas and even flaxseed retention enemas. If your bowels are extremely inflamed with colitis or Crohn's disease or something, you can get instant relief by doing a flaxseed retention enema. Take a cup of flax seeds and boil in water, get the gel and water from that, put it in an enema bag with other water, and inject that and hold it for hours if you have to, and it will coat the inside intestines and provide you relief from this acid burn inside your belly. You can also take slippery elm bark and come to it from the other end. So the blanket statement natural hygienists make when they poo-poo herbs, they don't realize, no, all herbs don't palliate. Sometimes they help soothe and protect the body. Most herbs are designed to get the bowels to move, so we can use those type of herbs on a temporary basis, knowing that you don't want to apply the herbs without correcting the dietary mistakes. You don't apply the art without the science. But we got to get the bowels moving, and sometimes it might be in our best interest to have a lot of activity, because we might see the same results in 1 month that might take 3. So when I first did this, the first 6 times I did this, I didn't do anything to make my bowels move. I had no problem having bowel movements every day. And remember, after the first week of my first juice fast, I started weighing the stuff come out of me because I was writing a book on weight loss, and I only had 5.8% body fat. I only had 9 pounds of fat. And the 7th time I did this, that's when I lost 20 pounds on the scale and got rid of 45 pounds of waste. I waited, I documented, I couldn't believe it. So again, there's a time and a place to do these type of things. Now, as I mentioned before, Herbert Shelton, T.C. Fry, they didn't believe in enemas and colonics. They didn't understand the ripple effect, and it killed them. It killed them, literally. They didn't understand that removing the cause is not always enough. Sometimes we've damaged the body. That's where the art comes into play. So when I'm coaching someone and they're not having bowel movements, I tell them, look, I can't tell you what to do. It's your option. Remember, everything we do is a slippery slope. We can use them in the beginning, and we've got to get them off them for sure as soon as we can, so that we give the body what it wants more than anything, that's rest, and let it rest for a while. But we might use those if we're going to go 3 months on juices, we might use something to make the bowels move every day for 30 days, or 1 week, or 2 months, whatever. But we got to get off them for a good couple of weeks at least before we stop this, so then we can break the fast the right way, jumpstart the system, get it working, so we'll never be constipated again. And now we can monitor what goes in, what comes out, and we can get a handle on how many movements we're supposed to have. Now, we have to realize we've damaged ourselves. If you've ever seen x-ray pictures of people's colons, Dr. Walker had several pictures of barium and enema x-rays of people's colons, and they didn't look anything at all like what a normal colon would even look like. It didn't even resemble the organ whatsoever. And what we have to realize is that some people have constricted areas in their colon. So when I'm coaching someone, and we don't see certain stuff happen at a certain time. And remember, I kept track of everything, so I always knew for me, day 10, day 11 was when I started seeing stuff that came out of me with definitions and grooves. Just like when I did that colonic, I saw the definitions and grooves in that stuff. I recognized it. So for me, I was 40 years old when I did my 7th juice fast. And that's when I went the distance. And at that point, that's when I first started doing my first enemas to help the process. And how do I want to say this? I guess the best way to go from here is to say that whenever I'm coaching someone, if they're younger than 40, then they may see that stuff within a week maybe. If they're older, let's say 50, 60, they may not see this for maybe 2 weeks. But the point I'm trying to get here is that we all vary when we might see old stuff. You could be 20 years old and have been a glutton all your life and weigh 500-600 pounds, and you might see that old stuff come out on day 2 or day 3. But the point here is, depending upon your age and what kind of condition you have, we have to realize that we should see old stuff come out of us pretty soon, and there's a possibility you might not have any, or you might have some of those constricted areas that I'm talking about, and the stuff can't come through there. So that's when we could do an enema, or especially a colonic, and those can work like a balloon angioplasty and stretch that stuff out. Now, I've coached thousands of people, and when I am working with someone, let's say a woman in her mid-50s, and we don't start seeing things around the beginning of the 3rd week, around 18, 19 or so, I start saying, look, you really need to consider your options here. We could do a psyllium bentonite shake to see if you're really clean, but I'm looking at your belly and I know you're not. I just know you're not. You can't have a belly and have that and be clean inside there. I just know it doesn't happen. Coach too many people. And I said, so we do a psyllium bentonite shake and test it that way. And if there's old stuff, it might pull it out, but if you have a constricted area, it's going to make things worse. So maybe we can try a colonic. And then when they do that, they come back and they go, oh my God, you wouldn't believe what came out of me. And then they end up having like 3 a week for the next month. And every time they go, they have tons of stuff come out. And then they start finally losing weight. And they were big. They were like 180 and 190 pounds for a little 5'4" woman. And I'm amazed at how many women weigh that much. And you look at them, you wouldn't think that, but most of my women I coach are like that. This is where they are. And if you're that big, my dear, you got crap in your belly, and having a colonic done every now and then isn't the solution. You got to apply the science also. And the best way to do that is to do the juice fast, the juice feast, a solid food vacation. So as I mentioned, there are times and places to do an enema in the beginning to make sure you don't reabsorb these toxins. There's a time and a place to do a colonic because we might have a constricted area and this will open things up. And there's a time and a place even to do a coffee enema. So whenever I'm coaching someone and they're doing everything right, they're consuming everything they need, they're supporting all their organs of elimination. We only looked at our bowels so far, but there's other organs we can support. And they're also supporting the body in case it's damaged in any way. Then that tells me that we're not supporting our body well enough because it looks like the liver is probably damaged. So if they have cleansing reactions, despite the fact that they're doing all of this, that's what tells me that, look, you wouldn't be having a cleansing reaction if your liver wasn't compromised. Because your bowels are working okay. So let's try a coffee enema and see what happens. I can't tell you what to do, but here's my file on coffee enema. In fact, it's one of the first files I send when I work with people. I always send people about 3 dozen files when I first start coaching them, which will back up most of what I'm going to say in my first appointment, which usually lasts 3 to 5 hours when people hire me for several months at a time. And the coffee enemas are on there because you need to be aware of what they can do for you if you decide to use them. And I've gotten positive feedback from every person I've done, and the only negative feedback is, you warned me if I did them late at night, they'd keep me up, but I couldn't help it. I was in so much pain, I had to do it, and they worked. And then occasionally, people will call me back and go, oh, I feel upset to my stomach. Well, I told you about that. Remember, read the file. It tells you what to do. I can't tell you what to do, but Dr. Gerson found this happening all the time. Bile will back up into the stomach. So what do? He drank a bunch of peppermint tea. Whole gallon if you have to flush it out. And I always get positive feedback going, it worked, it worked, it worked. So we need to learn from people who get results. And that's what I've done. From the very beginning, what I've done is I've done a comparative analysis on everybody. I came up with the science and the art based on 26 years of extensive research and analysis. I created a spreadsheet right from the very beginning because there's too many conflicting ideas. I made a list of all the people down that way, and across the columns, 14 columns long, I put different protocols. Enemas and Colonics, fasting, da-da-da-da-da, so that I could then go by and check everything, so then I could just at a glance look at dozens of the top people who got results and look at what they believe and what they don't believe, and I go, wow, look at this group over here who don't believe in the Enemas and the Colonics. Why is that? Well, they're so friggin' ignorant, they don't think they can screw up the law of cause and effect, but you guys are, because you're not looking at what comes after the effect. That's why T.C. Fry died. That's why Herbert Shelton died. They couldn't understand the ripple effect, and that's why they poo-pooed Enemas and Colonics. But again, they treated these things and gave blanket statements that made natural hygienists look like fools, saying that you're palliating symptoms, not all the time. There's a time and a place to help the body because it's damaged. And one of the best comments I remember reading a long time ago on this topic was this great guy named Tony, really super guy, one of the best posters ever on a raw food message board many years ago. I hope, Tony, you get a chance to hear this. But he said, look, if there was an oil spill in nature, sure, nature can clean it up, but we can help it along, can't we? So yes, we can do that. But you don't apply the art without the science. And there is a time and a place to apply the art. Now, when we look at allopathic medicine, that's the third way we can screw up the law of cause and effect. The psychopaths who rule the world misdirect our so-called experts and put them in between the cause and the effect to give the illusion that we solved your problem. Look, no more negative effects. We're going to give you a blocker or an inhibitor. We're not going to let the body communicate, and it's magic. The symptom goes away. The warning sign goes off. I took my car to a crooked auto mechanic and he clipped the wire to the sending unit. The other guy just took the sending unit out to make sure I couldn't rewire it. Don't you see? It's a magic act. The people who rule the world literally are psychopaths. When you study what psychopaths are, they're all con artists. They're all magicians. It's all about distraction. And I've said over and over and over again in my videos, we're either getting reconnected, going upstream, applying the science, or we're getting distracted by working downstream. And we got to work downstream, as I've mentioned. Whenever you apply the science, you might have to apply the art. Not necessarily. So you always start with the science. But then you never apply the art without the science. So what we're doing is we're always getting distracted. Art, downstream solutions, downstream solutions. It's not the solution, my friends. We got to go upstream. We got to correct the one mistake that put us down into the dark ages. And that's cooking our food. I've said it over and over, and I repeat myself over and over for a reason. I never know which one of my videos might go viral. I'm trying my hardest to get one of them to make it. And I'd feel horrible if the one that made it didn't say the most important things I want to say. If you go down to the description box below, you'll get a real good understanding of what I'm all about. I produced the Ultimate Solution playlist, 11-part video series, and the Ultimate Schematic playlist. When you look at the Ultimate Schematic, I start off by telling people that I have 12 main stories that I've decided are the most important of all my stories. If you haven't figured this out yet, I can tell stories for the next 10 hours non-stop, because I've been very passionate about learning everything I can about everything. But there are 12 stories I want to make sure that I tell at some point. And there are 4 that I always want to tell over and over and over. And if you guys subscribe to my channels, you might get tired of hearing these same 4 stories over and over, but my friends, they're too important. Every video I say I've got to make sure that we realize that we have too many references that support our current way of life and our current belief system. And there's only one way to challenge that many references, and that's with the brand new reference. That's where the first of my 3-step process comes into play. That's where you can take responsibility and transform your life in ways that when you do, you'll be so happy. You'll look back at the whole experience as one of the most exciting things you've ever done, and how this very video might be the fork in the road that got you going a whole different direction. Hopefully I can be what's called a spiritual runner for you. I had one come to me. Got me going a whole new direction. Thank you, Bob Wood. Love you, man. You're the man that turned me on to raw food. Ever indebted for what you've done for me. Yes. Very emotional. Please help me on my mission. Share this message with everyone you know. There are people suffering right now. Don't you feel the connection? Can't you tell there are people in pain all around you? I can't stand knowing what I know and realizing so many people are suffering. I feel it, and it gets me out of bed every day excited about getting out here and telling you guys about it. Am I passionate? Yes. How can I not be passionate? I feel the pain, and it's needless. We don't need it. Things could change. But I need your help. Let people know there's something they can do. Arthritis goes away. Diabetes goes away. Cancer goes away. Tumors go away. Headaches go away. Our ill behaviors go away. War, crime, and violence will ultimately go away. We're talking about the ultimate solution to solve the vast majority of the problems on this planet. How can you not be passionate? How can you not get emotional? If what I was saying is true, I couldn't just sit here and calm and talk about it. You gotta be infuriated at the shit that goes on this planet. Children dying every day, being injected with vaccines, given chemotherapy, taken away from their parents. What kind of sick world do we live in? We can change all that in an instant. This is an exciting time to live. We are the ones we've been looking for. We keep expecting some hero to come to save the day. Go look in the mirror, and it's you. You're the hero. Most of our problems are self-inflicted. That means you are the only one that can solve your problem. So please help me. Be the best that you can be. That's all I'm asking. If you don't have the inclination to get out there, you're not extroverted. I understand. You don't have to do that. But at least help the people you know that are close to you. Keeping in mind the ones you love the most will probably break your heart. The best we can do for them is be the change which we wish to see. And hopefully that'll get their attention. And I've said this virtually every show, and it's going to be my trademark from here on out. When you guys do this, you're in for a treat.